We all need someone to encourage us. Stay tuned for more. Hi and welcome to today's Little Lesson. Thank you for joining me on this another special edition of Little Lessons as we get closer to the beginning of a brand new year. We're looking at 12 biblical principles that you can apply to make next year the best year of your life. And you've been following along in this series, of which there have been so far nine episodes in this series. You by now have Proverbs 4:18 memorized. Are you ready? The path of the righteous is like the light of the dawn. It shines brighter and brighter until the full day. And that is a very encouraging scripture. And how do we all love, and myself included, encouraging scriptures? And the reason there are so many encouraging scriptures is that God is the great encourager. Boy, is he ever. Now you say, well, there's some not so encouraging things. Of course, God is perfectly balanced, and he can't just only say encouraging things, because some people, don't need encouragement. They need reprimand. But even in, God's reprimands, like, for example, take any of the major prophets where, God was speaking through them, or the minor prophets for that reason, in most cases, where God was, warning them and telling them of the coming wrath and so on and so forth. I mean, again, it's always speaking, at times to people whom he had showed a lot of mercy to for, in many cases, hundreds of years, generations of people. And finally, God runs out of patience, and he's telling them, you're going to suffer here now. Even in the midst of those dark and gloomy scriptures that aren't that enjoyable to read, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, pops up this wonderfully bright, encouraging section talking about, one day it's all going to be wonderful. And so all that stuff just, God just can't help it, I guess, because fundamentally he is an encourager. Obviously, he's a lover. Obviously, he's a God of grace. And so encouragement goes with those things. You can't be a lover of people without being an encourager of people. You can't demonstrate grace towards people, without the component of encouragement. And that's, that's the foundation of encouragement is, in fact, grace. And we'll talk about that in today's little lesson. So here's the 10th principle, biblical principle, that you can apply to make next year the best year of life. We all need someone to encourage us, and I like to have more than one, okay? But I do have more than one encourager in my life. Everyone needs at least one person who believes in them. That's so important. We all need someone who believes in us, because the world is full of discouragers and fault finders, and, even within the church, there's these people that seem like they feel like their ministry is to be the spiritual police, and find what's wrong with everybody. They're out there. And, the more that you're visible, like if you have any kind of a ministry, well, oh my goodness, you might as well have a target painted on your back, because the Pharisees and the spiritual police, whatever, they're looking for you. They for some reason, I guess they just, build themselves up by putting other people down. And that could be the fundamental problem, that they don't have anyone encouraging them. They're so discouraged. They have such a negative self-image that the only way they can lift themselves up, is by putting other people down. When you squash a bug, it elevates you a little bit. And I think sometimes that's the fundamental problem behind people who are just so critical. They perhaps have been criticized. Maybe they never had an encourager in their life. Maybe their own parents said negative, discouraging things to them, as they were growing up, and they have this terrible image. And so, just trying to survive emotionally and psychologically, the only way they figured out how to survive is to put other people down so that at least they can feel a little bit better about themselves. That's something to, maybe think about in your own life if you're a kind of a negatron. You didn't get the encouragement that you really needed, which again is another way of saying you didn't get the grace. Because, we can find fault with anybody. We're all flawed individuals. We all have the skeletons in our closets, and we all, have things that we're embarrassed about in our past. And if that's what people are focused on and always pointing out, that can be rather discouraging. But when someone comes along with some grace and says, oh, yeah, you made some blunders, but the future is bright for you because you've decided to get on the path of the righteous and follow Jesus. And so I believe in you. That's the kind of people that we need more of, and we need to be those kind of people. So here's number 10. You ready? Encourage everybody. I like that. It's got a little alliteration to it. Encourage everybody, not just people who, deserve it. No, the whole basis of encouragement is they really don't deserve. Discouraged people are looking at the reality, at the facts, and looking at their mistakes and the blunders and the errors and their past and so forth. And if you're going to judge them purely by the cold hard facts, well then, what could you say that's encouraging to them? But grace can jump in there and say, hey, the future, is not determined by the past. You can do differently. You can do better. You can learn your lesson. You didn't fail. You just discovered another way that didn't work. I like that. So I think about that about myself, because sometimes you have to encourage yourself. Nobody else will encourage you. You have to encourage yourself. That's actually even biblical. David, one time, there's a script about how he encouraged himself in the Lord because everybody else was so discouraging at that particular moment in his life. Yeah, you're looking at a person who has never failed once. Now, I've discovered thousands of ways that don't work. Okay? And you're probably in that same category. Okay? All right? So we all need someone to encourage us. Here's something I wrote down in my notes. I want to make sure I said it. Only God knows how many dreams have died due to a word of discouragement that could have been fulfilled, dreams that is, through a word of encouragement. Almost sends shivers up and down my spine just to ponder that statement. Only God knows how many dreams have died due to a word of discouragement. People have a dream, kids have dreams, people have dreams, they think they can make it, but somebody who they respect or someone who is an authority figure in their life gives them a word of discouragement and their dreams die. And those dreams could have been fulfilled if somebody would have encouraged them. Okay, so, we all need encouragement. We all need encouragement. Well, you and me, we need encouragement. But if you want to reap encouragement, probably you ought to try sowing some encouragement. So encourage everybody. There's a guy in the Bible who I love. He's first introduced in the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 4. And his actual name was Joseph. Most people don't know that. He was a Levite. Okay, interesting guy, a Levite of Cyprian birth. This is Acts 4:35, who was also called Barnabas by the apostles. So there's, this guy pops up in the early church and named Joseph, and all the apostles start calling him, they rename him Barnabas. And in the book of Acts goes on, and Acts 4:35 goes on to say, parenthetically, which translated means son of encouragement. Because that tells us something about Barnabas's character and personality. He was an encourager, and all the apostles, the early apostles, recognized that. And they stopped calling him Joseph. They started calling him son of encouragement. You're such an encouragement. You have so much grace for people. And, you're always encouraging them, lifting them up, telling them you can make it. You can make something of yourself. The future is bright and so forth. If you'll just do what God says, and it goes on to say that he owned a tract of land and he sold it and he brought the money and he laid it at the apostles' feet. Well, they were encouraged by his devotion to Jesus Christ. We're all encouraged by people that, are making a sacrifice to follow Jesus. It encourages us to make sacrifices and follow Jesus, okay? So Barnabas, although we don't have anything that I'm aware of recorded in the book of Acts that he actually said, where his words are quoted, but man, is he ever, mentioned frequently as you read the book of Acts and also then in some of the epistles as well. And I think there might be like 30 or more references to Barnabas. I mean, he's a big wig. He started off, God made him into either a prophet and or a teacher. That's found early on in Acts. And then he's promoted to the office of an apostle. But before all that, remember the story of Saul of Tarsus when he was converted on the road to Damascus. Big bad dude, persecuted the church, the number one church persecuted, public enemy number one for the church, but the Lord zaps him on the road to Damascus, And Saul makes his way after his conversion and he's born again and baptized in the Holy Spirit and so forth and already, sharing his faith and the gospel as he understands it. He makes his way to Jerusalem. Acts 9:26. When he came to Jerusalem, he was trying to associate with the disciples, but they were all afraid of him. Naturally, they were afraid of him. They heard, this guy's reputation has preceded him, not believing that he was a disciple. So they're hearing this message. This guy's been saved. This guy's, he's become a disciple of Jesus Christ. But nobody believes it. But one guy believes. Guess who that was? But Barnabas took hold of him. See, Barnabas said, I believe in you. I believe your story. I'll take the risk. Took hold of him and brought him to the apostles and described to them how he, talking of Saul, how he had seen the Lord on the road and that he had talked to him and how at Damascus he had spoken out boldly in the name of Jesus. So he assembled some of the data, some of the facts about, there's evidence that this guy is genuinely been born again now. But he took the risk of meeting a guy who, potentially could have thrown him in prison. See, encouragers are risk takers. They endorse people that other people don't endorse. And sometimes their endorsements go bad, because the person they tried to instill some courage in, and that's what encourage means. You're trying to instill courage in people. They don't follow through. And then, it makes the endorser kind of look bad. They take that risk, but they don't mind because they help so many people as they instill courage in them and they watch those people rise to meet. And like I said, God's the big encourager. So interestingly enough, and I'm going to follow a quick rabbit trail here. Interestingly enough, it was because he was such an encourager, because again, he's the guy who, got Paul in to see the apostles. And that's where Paul got his start in Jerusalem, being believed because one person, Barnabas, the encourager, the son of encouragement, believed in him. And he becomes a traveling companion with Paul. And they go on these missionary journeys. And Barnabas is always right there by Paul's side, no doubt always encouraging him. But it's really interesting. A lot of folks haven't seen this because they know about ultimately that Paul and Barnabas had a division and they had to go their separate ways. This is Acts 15, verse 36. And why that actually happened had something to do with Barnabas's encouraging personality. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, these are buddies now for years, apostles, fellow apostles, let us return and visit the brethren in every city in which we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. So Paul was proposing another missionary journey with one of his closest friends, Barnabas. Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, along with them also, because he had gone on a prior missionary journey, but he only made it so far, and he got discouraged and he went back to Jerusalem. He kind of, abandoned ship, as it were. But here's where the disagreement starts. But Paul kept insisting they should not take him along who had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. See, Paul is, evaluating John Mark based on the facts. We know this guy's history. We bring him along, he'd probably just abandon us again, But Barnabas, the encourager, oh no, we're not going to judge people based entirely on their past. I want to encourage him. No, this time it's going to be different. And there occurred such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another, and they doubled their efforts. Actually, it's sad, but it also has the silver lining. They separated from one another. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. That's one of the places they had been on one of their earlier missionary journeys. And Paul chose Silas and left, being committed by the brethren to the grace of the Lord. So they went separate ways. They doubled their efforts, and they, instead of being one team, they became two teams. And a lot of people think, it was this bitter hatred, when they were, no, not bitter hatred, a disagreement, and they agreed to disagree. But it was all based on the fact that Barnabas believed the best about John Mark. And I can guarantee you, John Mark was forever grateful. And one day you can ask him when you see him in heaven, what do you think about Barnabas? Barnabas is my encourager. So be a Barnabas. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build up one another. It all comes from our words. Finally, Ephesians 4:29 tells us, this is one of the verses I memorized a long time ago, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such as good for edification. That's building up, encouraging, that it might give grace to the hearer. There is a balance. Oh, yes. But moms and dads, encourage your kids every single day. I've noticed that successful people in business, most always, there are exceptions, of course, but they are encouragers. They build a team and they build a culture of people who love to work for them because they know that even if I make a mistake, if I make a blunder, this leader is going to encourage me and not judge me based upon history and the facts, but they're going to say, oh no, this has been a great lesson. Making that mistake is kind of a rite of passage here in our organization. Everybody makes it. I've made it more than anybody else have. I'm the chief, failure officer here. That's how I got to be the president. And let me encourage you, this is not the end. This is the beginning. And now you're that much smarter. And that $10,000 that you lost, that's going to save you from losing $1 million because of the wisdom you got. Okay. All right. Be an encourager. Encourage everyone. Okay, let me encourage you, if you got this video by an email, accompanied with it is a little information about this year's matching gift challenge. We're getting very close to the end of the year. The challenge this year is $375,000. When I last looked, we were about, reaching our goal, we were about $52,000. Now I'm making this video about a week before you're watching it, so I'm sure it's higher by now. But you've only got a few days to the end of the year. We have the potential to raise $750,000 that takes us into 2024. That's going to serve the least of these in all the places where the ministries of Heaven's Family are working. It's going to help expand God's kingdom in amazing ways in 2024 in East Africa through our Farming God's Way and disciple-making movement ministries, disciple multiplication ministry, okay? And so it's a wonderful opportunity. Let me encourage you to give alms. That was number 5, okay, as you complete your stewardship for 2023, okay? If you didn't get this video by way of an email, the link, just go to heavensfamily.org. The word heaven, the letter S, the word family.org. On our homepage, you'll see the matching gift challenge and how it all works and how you can get involved, okay? The deadline is midnight, December 31st. All right, until next time, may the Lord keep on blessing you.